Blessed be and happy Halloween and a happy Samhain to all of you out there. At the time of me making this video, we are fastly approaching the calendar date, October 31st, the day of Halloween and Samhain. However, what you may not know is that the actual festival and feast itself is not the beginning and the end of Samhain. It's not the beginning and the end of Halloween. It actually is just the beginning of the season. From now until the December solstice, the 21st or 20th of December, depending on where you live in the world, we are in the season of Samhain. And that means, collectively, we are going through what could be seen as a bit of an underworld journey, a time where we explore and descend into the shadows, our own and everyone else's. And in this video, I thought I would talk about some more activities as well as some more lore of the underworld and the shadows, and also talk about Our Lady herself, and talk a little bit more about things that you might want to consider on your spiritual path, and even a very simple spell that can help you, especially if you are looking to utilize this time for some very important, deep, internal underworld work. Because we have to remember, the underworld, the shadow, the darkness, it is a cosmic force, and it is not something to be feared. We all have our own underworld. We all have our own shadow. We all have our own darkness. And it is what we have that we can naturally understand, embrace, and even work with mindfully, intelligently, that is actually a part of what makes us divine. And for a lot of folks out there, there's still a lot of hate for the underworld. There's still a lot of fear around shadows and darkness, dark goddesses, which again, this video is, of course, dedicated to my beloved goddess Ereshkigal, mommy, which makes me kind of wonder where the line is when it comes to what they consider good and bad, because I could think of a lot of gods of prosperity and wealth, as well as a lot of goddesses of love and passion that have done some messed up shit in the name of their purview. And I can think of a lot of love and light, pranic healer, ascension gurus out there whose kids don't call them, probably for a reason. So it's important to look at your core of ethics and what your ethical compass is made of when you're judging cosmological forces like light or dark. So let's talk a little bit about the shadow. Let's talk about the underworld. Before we get into our spell, let's talk about what this season is all about, because it may also inspire you to take other actions during this time. A lot of people have been asking me questions about not only Halloween and Samhain activities, but underworld journeys and integration, shadow work, things like that, and also just simply coming back into a place of wholeness within themselves after a period of being fragmented. And so I hope that this can help you, and I hope that this might give you some ideas as to how to work and, of course, align with the season. We also have a very important astrological aspect coming up here with Jupiter retrograde, which is, again, as I said in the monthly horoscopes for November, a fairly cheeky bastard. And he actually honors a great deal of the underworld journey, or at least a part of it, the part of retrieval. And that is what we do in our relationship with the underworld. It is an experience, while we are alive anyway, of release and retrieval at the same time. While we are alive, we can look at the underworld as the gate to the rest of our soul. The soul that exists before we are born, and the soul that goes on after we leave the mortal body, right? The underworld is a place that is a part of the journey. And so we want to, of course, understand it and, of course, make peace with that process and become as intimately familiar with that process as we can. Going back to what I mentioned before about retrieval and release, that is what this time is all about. In the shadows, Sometimes we're afraid of things that jump out at us, things that we think might be scary or harmful to us. Sometimes we're scared of things that are meaningful. Sometimes we are scared of things that we are afraid to face because of how much they matter. And during this period, we can actually integrate and reconcile with both polarities. And it's very important to be a safe, sane, and spiritually evolved person to know how to do that. The underworld itself, where we go after we die, is not a place we stay for all eternity, but it is a place that we could consider almost like a second Earth, a second home. And it is a place where not only we reconnect and reintegrate with the rest of our soul, but it is a place that can either be as beautiful or as terrible as we made our lives. When we think about Babylonian or Mesopotamian mythology in the underworld, which is what, of course, Ereshkigal rules over, the underworld there, for some, is a dark and desolate place of dust and dark water, of lostness, of confusion, of emptiness, and of solitude. And for some, on the other end of the spectrum, it is a paradise. Something not unlike that Robin Williams movie, What Dreams May Come, where a person is learning how to create the ideal heaven and the ideal reality, shaping and beautifying the realm and the world around them with those that they are connected with there, those that are loved ones, those that are part of their soul collective, so those that are, working with the energies that still come to them from the love they've put out into the world. The underworld itself can actually be a very interesting teacher of what authentic love is. When we look at Babylon, or we look at Mesopotamia, Samaria, or Acadia, it is the offerings and the love, the authentic love that comes from those that still live, that gives the energy to those in the underworld to create paradise. Goddess Ereshkigal is an arbiter of those offerings. This time of year, it is traditional in many different cultures throughout the world to make offerings and to honor the dead, and to honor those that passed on, friends, family, pets, loved ones. And when we look at various myths about the Near East underworld, there was always talk about how kings and queens and priestesses and people of all different social classes would have lives that mirrored the love that they left behind. For it was only the offerings that were given in authentic, knowing, informed love that would actually go to those on the other side. And we do want to honor and love those that we honored in love and life. And for those of us who are still in mortal bodies, it might be wise to think about this. How much authentic love have you made, and will you get back when it's your time to visit the underworld? Because it's not about tradition. It's not about social contracts. Screw your legacy. Anything that comes just because it's an obligation or a job is not authentic love. How could one have sovereignty spiritually and the power without authenticity? It doesn't work. And the arbiter of that is Ereshkigal. But this is perhaps a topic for another video, and if you are open to me expanding on this, I would be very happy to make another video about that soon, because all throughout the Samhain season, now through the December solstice, we're going dark. But one of the things that we can understand about our ability to exist and connect with the underworld is that we can also go and not only connect with our loved ones, but also aspects of ourselves that are there. Both to release and deposit aspects of ourselves into that underworld, as well as to, again, retrieve and reconnect with things that we left there or that were put there once upon a time, whether they were put there consciously or unconsciously, by the actions or the choices of others, by circumstance, left by the wayside or dropped, it doesn't matter. And that's what the spell that we're going to be talking about is all about. This is a great spell to use when you are feeling lost or confused. If you feel like you're at a place in your life where you don't really know where to go with what you have, and you don't really know what you should have. If you are at a crossroads, if you are at a space where you are lost in terms of whether or not something should keep going, or if it is already dead and just a living zombie. When we think about, careers, and we think about all kinds of different situations and circumstances, sometimes we are not dealing with something that is alive, but the living dead. This is also a great time for releasing of things which aren't yours, that you know are not yours, and retrieving and realigning with what is. And Goddess Ereshkigal is there to help with that. Because Ereshkigal herself is a very severe and uncompromising judge. She doesn't do veils, she doesn't do stories, she doesn't care. She doesn't care about why anything happened. She's not there to process. But she will help you get back into alignment because she only wants in the underworld what belongs in the underworld. And she only wants in the world of the living what belongs in the world of the living. That is her job. Ereshkigal herself can see through all veils, no matter how dense the shadows or how blinding the light. And a lot of people don't know this about her. But before she actually became an underworld goddess, she was actually a sky goddess associated with the moon before she was kidnapped. Or in some myths, they're discovering it was perhaps orchestrated that she be kidnapped and taken into the underworld. So she is also a light goddess as much as she is dark. Silver celestial moonlight in particular. That is her speciality. And that is also why she has also come to be associated with the goddess Hecate and the goddess Selene. Which is why, also, when I refer to her and I invoke her, the goddess Ereshkigal, the queen of Irkalla, the keeper of the powers of Ganzir, goddess of the dead and the threshold, mommy. Working with Ereshkigal means being completely honest with yourself. And this spell is going to help you not only get back to authentic truth and authentic alignment with what belongs and release of what doesn't, but you have got to be completely honest with yourself because she's going to see right through you anyway. This is like going and working with somebody that can actually read your every thought and heart and feeling and know what you want and what you don't want, what's intrusive, what's programming, what is imposed, what's coming from other people. She sees and knows it all, which makes her so wonderful, but also probably very terrifying to some. You don't use Ereshkigal the way some witches and some practitioners and magicians would, quote, use the energy of a deity or a goddess or a god. You consult, and then she will work with you. And she has the records of every life ever lived, including yours, and every soul that's ever been, including yours. So she's trustworthy, just a tad severe. And I like her for that. And again, remember, she doesn't care about things like pressure, or social pressure, obligations, or duty, or contracts, or anything like that. She's above it. She's an expert in all of those things. But she's the kind of expert who's like, yeah, I'm the master of all of this, but I just don't care. I'm the master of it, so it's beneath me. And if you've made it this far, and you are intrigued, one of the things you can actually do with her, if you do want help with knowing what to release and what to retrieve, or if you would like to examine or explore if something is worthy of being retrieved or is ready to be released, this spell can help you because it will also take you through a little bit of an experience. I would call it a day in the life kind of spell, a chance to walk in a reality or a timeline where things are already changing so that you can get your bearings and understand what you want and what you're asking for and what that means for real integration. So let's get started talking about our spell. Now, to do this spell, it's actually very simple because for the most part, all you're doing is an invocation and a presentation. You're not really using any of your own energy. You're not really doing anything or casting anything besides opening up the space for Ereshkigal to work with you. But you are going to need to make sure that you are setting yourself up right. Now, the preparation work can be as elaborate or as simple as you'd like, but I find that being simple and straightforward is the way to go. Before you begin anything, I think you need to make sure that you are very clear in your purposes for contacting this woman. She doesn't BS. And again, she doesn't do a lot of processing. So you don't want her to figure you out if you already know what you're talking about. That is just something that's very true of Ereshkigal and her children. So you want to make sure that if you do know what you're looking to explore, to release, and retrieve, you're very open and honest about that. And you write that down. You write that down on a petition paper. If you don't know, but you feel like it's time, here's your test. Be honest about it. You can say, Ereshkigal, I feel the pull to release and retrieve, but what I do not know. And you can call upon her for help with that. The point is being honest. Once you are clear with what you are doing, what your intention is, and you've written it down, you're going to want to gather a few tools, very simple. 2 candle holders and 2 candles. 1 black for release, 1 white for retrieval. And then you're also going to want to present an offering. Because again, this is kind of a handoff spell, an entrustment spell. You're not using your own energy, and she is giving of her time and her energy to you. And so giving thanks is proper. I would also recommend, perhaps, bringing an extra offering in love of somebody that you know that may already be in the underworld or has already left the mortal coil, in honor and respect for the role that Ereshkigal serves. So if there is a relative or a friend or a pet or a loved one that you already know has made the transition, ask her to also deliver this offering to them, to show that you understand not only her purposes, but also the truth of how the exchange is to go. Just remember, it's got to be somebody that is going to receive this with given authentic love. Make sure it is authentic. Not out of duty, not out of obligation, and not just a way to try to make the spell work better. Once you've gathered your offerings, you're also going to want to anoint your candles. Your candles themselves are also going to want to be inscribed. You could scribe onto the candle with a ballpoint pen, or if you want to use a little thumbtack or a nail or something sharp, you just write on the candles themselves. You write Ereshkigal's name, Ereshkigal. You write your name, whatever your name is, and then you write down release on the black candle, and then on the white candle you write down Ereshkigal, and then you write down your name, and then you write down retrieve on the white candle. And what you're going to do then is you're going to anoint or rub down the candles themselves with almond oil. It's got to be almond oil for this. See, olive oil, for some people, olive oil is kind of their go-to, but I've found with Ereshkigal, she does appreciate, again, acknowledgement. Remember, this is a woman that was banished into the shadows when she shouldn't have been, and she worked her ass off to just rule the place instead. So any kind of acknowledgement, but also engagement with what makes her her, and recognition of what makes her her, is important. So I like almond oil, which was actually the traditional carrier oil and base oil for a lot of Mesopotamian and Babylonian cooking and ceremonial arts. Anoint them both with almond oil and present your offering, present your second offering and your letter, what you have written, and call her in. Call her in simply by calling upon her herself. You can say, Goddess Ereshkigal, Queen of Irkalla, Keeper of the powers of Ganzir, Goddess of the dead and Goddess of the threshold, come to me now. Something simple like that. Or you can make it as theatrical as you'd like. Once you've invoked her, you tell her, because she is listening, she is already there. She goes wherever her name is spoken. You ask her to release whatever it is you want to release, or to help you find whatever it is to release, right? Whatever you wrote on your paper. And you light the black, and then you light the black candle. And then you ask her, Ereshkigal, help me to retrieve, or if you don't know, help me to retrieve what I need to retrieve that I don't know, whatever you've written on the paper, and light the white candle. Tell her of the offerings you are bringing her, that you have given her. Traditionally, Ereshkigal enjoys sweets. I like to offer her dates and figs, or maybe even a fortified wine, like a port, something heavy and red. And then you also present your second offering, the one to your loved one, on the other side, right? So I might say, give this to so-and-so, or give this to so-and-so. And thank you for presenting my love to them. And as you finished all of that, then you ask her again, Ereshkigal, please, show me what must belong in the underworld, and what must belong alive and living with me and my path. And let her take care of the rest. You offer your thanks, and you bid her farewell. You let the candles burn down all the way down. And then over the course of the next week or two, pay attention to what is coming up in your story. Opportunities to retrieve or opportunities to release, likely both at the same time. You might find that certain circumstances are starting to illuminate and illustrate where certain things are heading for a transition. Different stories, different situations starting to move a certain way. And then certain things coming back for retrieval. Sometimes they're resources, sometimes they're connections in their stories, sometimes they're old paths and goals, old dreams. And she will do this for you, because remember, part of her job, part of her role, is to make sure that what belongs in the underworld goes into the underworld, and what belongs in the world of the living is in the world of the living. She will help you with this, again, as a fair but uncompromising judge, but just what the doctor ordered. If anyone is feeling lost or confused, or perhaps could use some help with a new integration. So that is what I've got for you all. I hope you found this helpful. If you did, don't forget my name is Nico, Son of Selene. Like, share, and subscribe. Leave questions in the down bar below, and let me know what you think. Take care.